Hey there. Thanks for joining again this week. We're going to kick right off here again, as always, as quickly as possible. And we're going to talk about power statements. And so this is all about really helping our prospects understand, just how much of an expert we really are. I think sometimes when we get out there selling, we don't take enough time to build rapport and position ourselves as an expert. We kind of start talking about what it is that we do, and we don't always really focus enough on how we can help. And so the questions that we talked about last week were really heavily focused around unearthing the needs of a customer. This week, what I want to kind of do is talk about how to craft some power statements, some kind of one-liners that you can use on an ongoing basis to really position yourself as an expert once you kind of understand what that need is. And so again, the power questions are super important to lead with, but these power statements kind of follow or almost work in tandem with those questions we were talking about last week. So yeah, great. I see some people throwing their names up in the chat here. Definitely always love seeing who's here and where everybody's from. And of course, as always, throw your questions there in the chat throughout the presentation. I try to keep an eye on it as I go. It's just easier to deal with things that way. And then we'll circle back at the end and make sure that we cover anything that's a little bit larger or deeper conversation. So as we go through today's discussion, I just thought I would focus on one ICP. ICP is an ideal customer profile. So today what we're going to do is talk about ICP Sarah. And so this is a suburban homeowner, picks up the phone and asks us if we can come out and give a quote on landscaping and a backyard swimming pool. That's going to be today's example. Now, in your business, you may have very different ICP, and that's okay. We're just talking about a concept and using this as an example. I did do a couple of, maybe 2 sessions back, I did an overview of how to create ideal customer profiles. If you missed that one, I'd strongly suggest going back to that because it really does become a little bit of a foundation for many things in the business. Having these profiles allows you to really craft a product that solves their problems, but it also allows you to create a sales process so that you get really good at selling to your ideal customers, but also a customer care follow-up program where you get really good at keeping those customers. And so ICP is kind of a foundational piece. In this case, when we're dealing with this homeowner, we want to kind of have a sense of, who they are. And when we know kind of who they are and what their pain points are likely to be, we can ask better questions. And we talked about those compelling questions last week. But then we can kind of transition those into like some powerful statements or some compelling statements that create that urgency, that create that need to work with us. And so ultimately what we want to be able to do is get them on a pathway where they believe that we have the solution to the problem that they have in front of them. And so these statements that we're going to talk today are really a key delivery mechanism in early conversations, whether it's on the phone, over Zoom. Maybe you're doing some of your preliminary meetings on Zoom. A lot of people are starting to do that. I think that's a great idea. I think the quality of the questions and the power statements dictate a lot more than most people think. And so as early in the conversations as possible, as you kind of get through the initial screening and you know that this person meets your ideal customer profile, almost immediately you've got to start to do some fact finding. And I think the best way to do fact finding is with these questions and these statements combined. And so the statements are kind of there to almost allow us to move to the next question. Because we need to build momentum, and these powerful statements, I think, do that more than anything. So when the phone rings and we start talking to this person, we're going to need some initial questions to screen and make sure they're the right ideal customer profile. Then we're going to move on to either a Zoom meeting to actually get to know each other and understand what they're looking to do on the property, or we're going to go out and do that first meeting in person. In either case, we've got to have some questions that help us move things along. So a good opener would be just, finding out what made them decide to do this project now. And so regardless of whether it's a swimming pool or an irrigation system, or a snow plowing contract, we just want to understand why now. Did a past contractor not work out? Did someone not come through? Did you just win the lottery? We just need to understand that. And here, this is an easy question, but it is a powerful question in the sense that we're finding out if there's actually a lot of urgency here, or is this person likely to really do this project? Like, depending on this answer, we're going to learn a lot. If I find out that they want this pool finished by the July long weekend and it's January 1st, that's important information. But if they also told me that they want the pool finished by July 4th because they're hosting a wedding the following week or the week before, and they want to use the property to entertain all the guests, well, there's going to be a lot more urgency with that customer. And so this is an easy place to start. It's a pretty casual question, but we're getting lots of valuable information. And we want to kind of look a little bit further. Obviously, we want to find out what their vision is for the property. And so in this case of the swimming pool and some landscaping, we're going to move on to some short questions. I kind of sometimes call these jabs. Like, we ask the big question and then we poke a few jabs in, and this just makes it more conversational and natural. And I think that's pretty important for salespeople to remember. Like, sales questions should be conversational. They shouldn't be feeling as though they got put on the hot seat and you've got a list of 20 questions that need to be answered. I think that comes off a little bit uncomfortable for a lot of people, or a bit one-sided. And I think when you're selling people, they want to deal with people, they want to trust you, they want to understand you. And I think when you get really good at creating some questions that unearth the pain or the problem they're trying to solve, but also give you an opportunity to explain more casually how you solve that for other people like them, it becomes a lot more powerful. So these statements are more or less us coming back saying, yeah, we do that for people all the time. So in the case that they start describing their surroundings of the pool, it opens the door for us to start describing other projects, the way that we've helped people overcome similar obstacles. Maybe they're saying they'd love to have a waterfall, and you can kind of start speaking to them about other projects that you've done with waterfalls. It kind of just opens up the opportunity to tell them, because if we just start telling them too much too soon, we might be telling them about the wrong thing altogether. And I think we've probably all dealt with salespeople like that, where they're selling you on something that you didn't even expect to be sold. And I think oftentimes salespeople don't ask enough questions to unearth the pain, and they just start dropping powerful statements or descriptive statements of what they're selling way too soon. So got to kind of mix the balance of these statements in with your questions. So asking questions about like their general aesthetic. What style do you like? Was there a general theme? Is there a specific type of design that you like? If I were there selling swimming pools, I would make sure that I had my meeting at the kitchen table. I would make sure that my portfolio was laid out. I would make sure that as we get into these discussions, I can kind of flip back and forth throughout the portfolio and refer to a few really good pictures and ask questions like, which one sort of appeals to you? Maybe I've got a super modern garden in my portfolio, and I've got something a little bit more natural, and I've got something a little bit more English, and I can start to get a better sense of the aesthetic. And so I think this "what is your vision" theme of questions and power statements really allows you to do a lot. And so your power statements here are often, here's how I've helped another family like yours build out their backyard resort. They told me they wanted to have an entertaining area. They told me that they wanted to have jumping rocks. They told me that they wanted to have an area for sunbathing, and they wanted to have a yoga and Zen area off in a corner somewhere. And so this is what that project looked like. And now I'm referring back to my portfolio, but my power statement is kind of visual in that case. And it's really just showing what makes us better or what makes us the contractor of choice. So then as we kind of move into another category of questions, it's always like we want to figure out how they're going to use the backyard. So first, we want to understand why they want to do it now. Second, we want to understand what the general look is like. But now it's like, well, let's get functional here and find out questions about exactly how you're going to use it. So my powerful questions are going to be things like, hey, what activities can you see yourself doing in the backyard? And powerful questions are important because what you're actually doing is forcing them to think about what the future state looks like. And you're actually going to try to drive a lot of desire with your answers. Like when they tell you that they want to be cooking in the backyard, you're going to go overboard and start talking about outdoor kitchens and how you specialize in outdoor kitchens. And that's your power statement. If they're really athletic and, they say, well, hey, our kids are all playing basketball, then you could sell them a sports court in the backyard as well and really focus on that. If they start talking about, they just want somewhere to unplug and they want an outdoor office and they want a space in the backyard to have a couples massage, well, then that's what your power statement focuses on. And so this, how will you use it? We've built a little trust because we've already said, hey, why now? What do you want it to look like? Now this how you will use it is really setting us up, I think, for much stronger power statements. This is us talking about how we are the expert in designing and installing gardens that allow them to get this sort of future state that they're thinking of. And so the how you will use it is, again, we're building momentum. So we picked up some momentum with this one. Then, we want to kind of start to have more deeper conversation around specifics, which actually allows, I think, a more natural point to start to embed budget discussions. And so, again, I don't want to start talking budget in my first few questions, but now that I've had the time to warm them up with some power questions and power statements, I can really start to talk about budget. And so when I get to the must-haves and preferences, it's me saying something along the lines of, hey, of all the things that we're talking about, what are the things that you want most? And when they come out and say I want the swimming pool and I want the outdoor kitchen, the nice to have would be maybe the cabana or the pergola. Then I can start to also seed in other things like, oh, what about landscape lighting? Would you use the garden at night? Have you considered, maybe installing irrigation? Because I think we're going to need a lot of planting to create the privacy that you're after. And so this gives us an opportunity to start to weave in things that they haven't talked about at all yet, that we know are important, that they're just not seeing because it's not their area of expertise. And so I think here, this must-haves and preferences piece is a great opportunity for you to really position yourself as a design authority. In this case, if I were selling snow, this would be where I'm really the technical authority on snow. If I was selling residential landscape maintenance, again, this is me saying, hey, this is where you're going to get the return on investment of having us do your property each week. We're going to improve it over a period of time, and here's how we're going to do it. And I'm telling them, without doing it our way, it's not going to work. And so depending on your ICP, this must-haves and preferences really changes. But in any case, it's me having an open door to really share what makes us special, why we are the authority, why our customers are so happy, success stories from the past. And then I can start to say, depending on budget, I think it would be really good to add this other feature to the swimming pool. I think it would be really cool to have a waterfall on the back side of it, since you've told me that you really like natural environments. And now you can start to talk about overall budget a little bit more naturally, because you can start to talk along the lines of, hey, this is a long list of things. What we try to do is design, and we design to your budget. And so with so many things on the table here, I really would suggest that we go ahead and start designing this property. We typically charge X for design. How does that sound to you? You get a quick, well, I don't know, I wasn't really planning on using a design. And then you continue to build more conversation by being really good at staying on this, and then kind of molding that into a budget conversation, and then letting them know that the next step is really to go ahead with the design. But I really think that this must-haves and preferences category, again, we're building momentum. This is us getting really close to moving them over to a conversion. We're on something kind of heavy there for a few minutes. We're talking budget, we're talking features. Now we want to maybe even weave in some other softer questions around, who's going to use it? Now what we want to do is build a little momentum and excitement without necessarily having to overthink money and decisions and moving forward. And so I think it's natural if we kind of touch on some of the, more difficult, but then also paint the future picture in the conversation and talk about, who else is going to be using this property? How many people would be dining? For when we design a garden, which is our next stage, we really design it for the way that you're going to use it and who you're going to use it with. So if you've got young kids or a big friend network, or maybe you host huge extended family barbecues every Sunday, we want to make sure that we design for that. And that allows us to really develop a budget that's more suitable, because we understand how big things need to be and all these types of things. So again, we can kind of weave this in, and these questions don't start and finish, and there's no clear categorization. But when you learn how to sell using compelling questions and statements, you've got many of them, and they're just kind of there sitting there waiting for you, but you kind of know the order. Like after we figure out the preferences and what they really want, then we're going to kind of talk about who's going to use it, and we can drop some power statements there. And then what we want to kind of do is be able to wrap that all up into a close, which in the case of a backyard swimming pool is going to be a design, right? We don't want to go out and start quoting complex backyards without getting a design. And so I'd be asking for that design. So I thought I'd just put some examples of power statements up. So kind of that last section that we just went through is like a conversation, right? We're asking a question, we're dropping some power statements. I think it's important when you start building these out to create some power statements that you're going to use in some order, but it's not necessarily always the same order. I think that's important for people to remember, is like when you build powerful statements, it's you getting really, really good at automatically being able to spew the right thing at the right time. And we're just trying to train our minds. So it's almost like visualization. If you kind of consider your mind as like all of your knowledge and patterns are stored in the back of your mind, and all of the data that's coming in is in the front of your mind. Your frontal cortex gets filled with all kinds of information, but all your real knowledge, your subconscious knowledge is set in the back. And when you've got these power statements built and you've practiced them and you've done role play training over and over with other people, when you get in front of somebody, the power statements just come out. They just come from your subconscious mind. It's like pedaling a bike. And that's why these things are so important to learn and practice and standardize in a business, because what tends to happen is, owners sometimes think that everybody sells the work the same way because we're all selling the same thing. But the reality is it's usually not the case. So an example here, I love this. It's out of a book, the Sales Bible book. Don't sell drill bits, sell the perfectly smooth holes they create. I don't think anybody gets in the car on a Sunday morning all excited to go and buy drill bits. It's just probably not something someone does, but I'm sure plenty of people need a hole drilled somewhere. And when they need that hole, they will go and drive to pick up drill bits, right? Kind of obvious. The need dictates the purchase. It's not the actual item. And so the power statements that you create need to really service the needs. The power questions are finding out what the needs are. That's why we wanted to find out why now. That's why we wanted to find out what their preferences are, their style that they like, who's going to use it. We needed all that information so that we understand the need. Now I'm selling an event space for a wedding if they need that pool. So I'm going to talk about that consistently because that's what they actually want me to create, is an event space for an upcoming wedding. Whereas if I just focused on the pool, I wouldn't actually be able to sell to their emotional need. And so we want to figure out what those needs are, and that's what the questions are for. But these power statements are there for us to establish ourselves as the trusted advisor, the expert, the guide that's going to take them on the path that they need to get on to solve that problem, and do it in a trustworthy way with an expected outcome that they don't need to be worried about at the end of the day. And so the better we are at doing this, obviously, the more deals we're going to get. So the power statements are all about having categories that you work on for your business. And again, if you're in the irrigation business or the lighting business or the residential landscape maintenance or commercial landscape maintenance, these are all going to be a little different, but the categories that you create and like some of the statements that you build will overlap a little bit. And so in this case, what we're saying, one major category that you need to really be focused on for residential landscapers would be the fact that your company is in business to transform outdoor spaces into a personal oasis of some sort. Ultimately, that's what we're there to do. We're there to transform an outdoor space that just exists today into a personal oasis. And generally speaking, when someone picks up the phone to trade their money for your services, they're getting you to make their property nicer than it was before. It's kind of simple. So we need to have statements that actually ensure that they understand that that's what you do. So in this case, imagine stepping into your backyard and feeling like you've entered a personal retreat. That's what we do for other people. I want to show you my portfolio so that you can see the type of work that we do. And then I'll explain how our expert landscape install services really come to life. And so I've got this statement that I can just drop on them and it just comes out of my mouth, and it's not ever word for word. It's just conversational. Another category is to talk about return on investment. And so boost your home's curb appeal and your value. Whether I'm selling residential landscape maintenance or this backyard pool, I have to make sure that they understand that if they spend the money, they're going to actually get a return on that investment. If I do the weekly maintenance, the house is going to be worth more money. If I build a pool in the backyard, the house is going to be worth more money. So I have to be able to speak to that, and I have to be able to create a power statement that really allows them to see what path I'm bringing them on. And so if I'm selling residential landscape maintenance and there's a $20 mow and blow guy that is chomping at my feet, I can very quickly say, hey, listen, what we do is we actually transform your property with our landscape maintenance. We don't actually just cut the grass. What we do is we make your property look a little bit better every week over 5 years. And so there's a little bit bigger investment here. And this is a long-term relationship. We're going to evolve your property. You can imagine if you look at some of the pictures of these beautiful castles in Europe, they've got these incredible gardens that have been there for hundreds of years. And those gardens didn't look that amazing when they were planted. They got that way by having really, really incredible gardeners work on those properties over a long period of time. And so that's the way we go about handling your property. We really focus on what we start with and how we can evolve it and make it better over time. We're going to make your lawn healthier and your plants healthier. We're going to constantly be avoiding pests in the lawn, diseases in the plants. We're going to be infill planting. We're going to be mulching. We're going to be adding seasonal color to the garden, but we're really here to see your property evolve over time. And if you don't do this way, right now I see that you've got $50,000 worth of landscaping. You know what? 5 years from now, that $50,000 worth of landscaping won't be worth much if you don't maintain it well with that mow and blow guy. But if with us, that $50,000 of landscaping is probably going to be worth $150,000. If you don't do business with us, 5 years from now, you're probably going to have to rip all this out and do another installation, and it'll just get worse every day thereafter. Or you can spend a little bit more each year, make your property look better, increase your curb appeal. If you ever decide to sell the house between now and then, it's going to sell for a lot more money, and you're going to save the need for that future expense. And so I can kind of explain all of that based around the customer need, right? Their need is they've got somebody here to give them a quote on grass cutting, but I just turned the need into, actually, you need me to improve the value of your home over a long period of time. And so the power statements really set us up for these opportunities. Another category that's really important, it could be any variation of this, but depending on when you're asking power questions, what they're telling you, then you can kind of start to come back and position yourself here. But generally, lower maintenance is big. People call us for maintenance, but they don't like paying for maintenance. So we have to figure out how to, particularly when I'm designing a backyard swimming pool, for example, how to explain maintenance to them, but then also how to explain that we design and build these things with low maintenance in mind, with eco-friendly solutions. We've got low voltage lighting that's LED powered. We've got energy efficient hot tub pumps. We've got the most energy efficient pool heater on the market. These things matter. And so as we talk through those things, again, we're positioning ourselves as an expert. And I'm not saying to over rotate on this, but I do think it's pretty important when we talk about maintenance and sustainability and operating costs, because a lot of people are very concerned about these topics. And I think working them into the conversation in the residential market shows that you're the expert and shows that you're a little bit deeper thinker maybe than the guy showing up to quote the job who doesn't ask a lot of good questions. Design, obviously, we want to have really, really good, compelling statements around design. And the most compelling way to do that is to have a beautiful design portfolio, to have a beautiful website. But it's super important that as you're coming through that Q&A, that you can really describe your design and sell your designs and really explain to them why you charge for design, first off, and what happens when you don't pay for design and you get a napkin design or a one-pager. And so here with my power statement, I'm often selling the fact that, yes, we charge for design. And in fact, we actually charge quite a bit for design, but it's kind of a necessary step in the sense that a few things happen when we don't. When we don't do a good design, we don't end up with a beautiful backyard. That's obvious. We sell art. And so we have to, in order to create incredible art, we have to put a lot of time into it. It's a creative process. And so for sure, I could scribble a square box and a rectangular patio on your backyard for free. And if that's what you want, that's great, but that's just not what we do. There's contractors who do those types of jobs, like commodity type jobs, but that's not us. What we do are designed landscapes. We build backyard retreats for people who really want the best. And that's what we do. And in order to do that, we have to charge for the design and that creative process because it takes time. And everybody in the world understands that time costs money. And so sell the fact that you put a lot of time into your designs with your powerful statement, but then also really speak to the other elements of a design. Like, hey, I know that other companies do design for free, but I can't tell you how often we get calls from homeowners who have like fired contractors halfway through a project because the crew is there and they don't have detailed drawings. They don't know what they're there to put in. And oftentimes the homeowner is directing the crew on what they want. And then, inevitably, sometimes they come home and there's something built that they weren't expecting, or sometimes things just aren't built very well. They don't understand the proper process because they don't have a drawing explaining all the steps of the process. So they make it up on their own out in the field. And when that happens, quality usually is impacted pretty negatively. So ultimately, what we're trying to do here is really just convince people of the value of design. So your power statements have to be deep. They have to explain art, and they have to explain functionality, and they have to explain the process of, we can't build these projects without these. As we move on, the last one that I think is really important is to really focus around your installation. And again, that design component sets you up for this. And I think it's even kind of, they're part and parcel to each other. But here, what I really think is, this is an opportunity for you to really focus on your training that your company has, apprenticeships that your company have, product training that you might be doing with manufacturers, certifications that your staff have, either from manufacturers or educational certifications. You want to talk about, obviously, you want to talk about your technology that powers your company, the level of detail that you can go to in estimating, in scheduling, in service verification, in taking before and after pictures during the work, ongoing project pictures. A lot of our customers are using the Crew app to document the project along the way. So anytime there's going to be buried pipes, there's photos taken, and this is all being held in the system. And so sell your technology, sell the fact that you're a tech-enabled landscape company, that you've got really good record keeping, that you've got click and pay or automated invoicing, that you've got a customer portal, that you're going to give them invoices with date, time, and weather if you're in the snow plowing business, whatever it happens to be. But make sure that we can really, truly establish how this process is going to be hassle-free in comparison with some others. And in the case of a backyard pool, I think, really telling customer stories, explaining the timeline, offering up some references, even offering on larger projects, on projects that were sort of over 300,000, I was typically offering homeowners a couple of site visits. I would offer to take them and look at 2 or 3 other pools on a Saturday morning, for example. And so ultimately, what I want to do here is just really establish, as I come to the end of my conversation and my Q&A with them, the fact that we do things differently. I want to make sure that I sell my company, that I really explain to them what makes us different. And hopefully, as we've gone through the power questions and statements, we've just kind of kept building momentum and we're filling the tank. And what I mean by that, oftentimes I say that when we talk to salespeople, we start with a full tank of fuel. And if we ask the wrong questions or we say the wrong things, then we slowly drain that fuel. And if we ask too many, the tank's empty and the deal's gone. And here, what I'm thinking is the opposite. I start with a full tank of fuel and I don't burn a drop. By the time I get to the end, I've got all this momentum and the momentum's running so smoothly. I don't need any fuel. So I'm not burning any. I'm just getting them to the line. And so I've kind of visualized that over the years, is like, how do I get this conversation to flow on its own without draining the tank? I don't want this person to feel pressured. I don't want them to feel any stress in the conversation. I just want to find out what their pain is. And then I want to help them understand exactly what we do differently to help them overcome the pain or the problem or the issue that they're trying to solve. And so this last piece is really important. This is where we can really sort of tug at the emotional side a little bit when selling, by explaining to them what could go wrong And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't really like selling from a negative perspective, and I don't like ever trashing my competitors and whatnot, not at all. But I do like describing what we see happen when people don't do business this way. What happens with a free design? What happens with a weekly mowing company versus a personal gardening company? What happens when you hire the wrong snow contractor for the lowest price? Like, it's okay to talk about those things and describe what happens. And when you understand how they want to use the backyard and who they want to use it with, you can start to give some much better examples. And you can kind of tie the conversation back to everything that they've given you in those first few questions. I think that makes a big difference. So thanks for joining this week. I don't see any questions, but if you've got any, throw them in the chat. I'll take those as we go. Next week, we're going to talk about how to weave this into a bit of a 30-second commercial for yourself. Ultimately, exactly how to introduce yourself and tell people how you help them. Drop a couple of key things into that 30 seconds that really positions you as an expert and a trusted advisor, whether it's an outbound phone call, maybe you're cold calling somebody for a big commercial contract, or maybe it's even just the first time you're introducing yourself to somebody who's been an inbound lead that's come into to your office. So we'll talk all through this next week. Again, as always, thanks for joining. I really appreciate you being here. And if you'd like, you can follow along. I usually try to post most days on LinkedIn and Instagram. I try to throw something in there, some thoughts of the day based on questions and conversations that I have with all of our great customers here at Element. So appreciate you joining, and we'll see you next time.